Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams working in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple: to help you see bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. In this episode, I interviewed Jack Sullivan, Director of Training for the Responder Safety Institute. The mission of the Institute is to reduce highway incidents involving first responders and to minimize the impact on responders who are involved in these incidents. Our discussion was recorded at the National Volunteer Fire Council Summit in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where Jack was presenting on highway incident safety as I was presenting on the 30 deadly situational awareness barriers. Thank you to the 50-plus people who attended my session and for sharing your wonderful feedback. The one seasoned veteran who was in the program noted, "I realized I don't know what I thought I knew." It's a common response to the program. Rest easy, my friend. I'm trying very hard to change that. Through the articles on the website, the online academy, the books, the videos, the live programs, and of course, through this radio show. Stick with me and we'll change that for you. During this interview, Jack shares how a seemingly routine incident caused Jack to lose a friend and how this was a wake-up call that inspired him to get involved in educating responders on roadway incidents. How the incident uses case studies, dash cam videos, and Department of Transportation videos to build awareness of roadway incidents. The challenges of tracking roadway near misses and injury incidents. How the motoring public today lack respect for authority for first responders, and how they may suffer from what Jack refers to as the 4Ds, being drowsy, distracted, drugged, and or just dumb. I guess we could add another D, disrespectful, and make it 5 Ds. How a me-first attitude, texting, talking on cell phones, and GPS are creating huge problems. Sadly, some firefighters, Jack noted, are among the D drivers when operating their personal vehicles. Why it's so important to build relations and rapport with public safety agencies in advancing the mission for roadway incident safety to avoid conflicts, including the involvement of partner agencies in developing joint highway incident response standard operating procedures. Jack talked about the upcoming National Traffic Incident Management and Responder Safety Training Program, Train the Trainer program, gathering that's going to happen on the campus of the National Fire Academy the week following this interview, and how you can access the Responder Safety Learning Network, where you can register and obtain free training on roadway safety. So let's, without any further ado, get into our interview with Jack Sullivan. All right, Jack, let's start out by you telling the audience who you are and what role you play in helping to improve responder safety.
Rich, I'm the Director of Training for the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. We run the website respondersafety.com, and our mission is to protect emergency responders from incidents of being struck by vehicles, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, police officers, and others who respond to roadway incidents of all types in all kinds of conditions. The idea is that we're trying to prevent those types of incidents from happening in the first place, or if they do, to reduce the impact on the departments that are involved.
Okay. And you were here, we were at the NVFC Summit in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and you were here presenting on your passion topic yesterday. What message were you sharing with the audience that maybe my audience on the podcast would enjoy hearing?
I think with your theme of situational awareness, the first thing we're trying to do is to get people's attention and build awareness of the hazard that's out there. We want them to understand that firefighters are being struck and killed, struck and injured, that emergency vehicles are being struck and damaged or destroyed in some cases on an all too frequent basis. And because the subject that we deal with is not one of the more sexy fire service subjects these days, We've got to work a little bit harder to help people understand that the hazard that we're talking about is something that they do or are exposed to every time they respond to any incident in any kind of a roadway environment or even a parking lot in some cases. So our mission, first and foremost, is to remind people, make them aware of the hazard that's out there, and then we spend an awful lot of time giving them the benefit of the knowledge that we've accumulated since back in the late 90s of how to prevent these incidents from occurring in the first place, and more importantly, how to protect their personnel at an incident scene so that we won't experience a line of duty death or injury.
What got you started on this? I don't know what year. I know you've been doing this a while, but what was the motivation that got you started on this topic for first responders?
Well, for me, it was a case of an incident that occurred on the Pennsylvania Turnpike in March of 1998. The crew from the fire department that I had recently retired from responded to a routine motor vehicle crash where a car had spun off of the turnpike in a heavy downpour rainstorm, ended up in a ditch line about 75 feet away from the operating lanes of traffic. And our department was dispatched along with the local ambulance crew and the state police to work the incident. And everybody that was there would tell you that in the initial stages, this was just a routine incident, type that they do every day, day in and day out. Yet while they were on scene, a tractor trailer approaching the scene on the turnpike lost control of his vehicle. The tractor trailer overturned and wiped through the incident scene, striking 10 of our personnel. Firefighter Dave Good did not get to go home that day, and the other 9 were put in the hospital. And that was a huge wake-up call for us in 1998 because it was not a subject that we had addressed or were thinking about at that time. And I guess my mission has been to prevent those types of incidents from occurring ever since.
Was that incident day or night?
It was daytime. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The roads were wet. There was a lot of water on the roads, which is why the car spun out. She hydroplaned. And that may have played a role in the tractor-trailer incident that occurred afterwards. But the truck driver basically said he saw the flashing lights on the right-hand side of the road as he was approaching the scene, decided to move into the left lane as he approached the scene to avoid whatever was going on. And his trailer smacked the concrete barrier wall between the eastbound lanes of the turnpike and the westbound lanes of the turnpike. And at that point, he lost control of it. It came back across the highway, crossed the 2 lanes into the shoulder area, struck the assistant chief's vehicle, overturned, and hit all of the responders that were at the scene at the time. Okay,
so when you're doing the class, you start out with a case study or some case studies like this one or some others?
Yes. I think to build the awareness piece, we use video clips and stories of incidents that have occurred, photographs in some cases. And unfortunately, almost every class I do, I can present something that has happened in the recent past. We don't certainly tell the story of the Turnpike incident because that was personal for me, but there are so many other examples of emergency responders being struck on a regular basis. We have dash cam video that we use. We have traffic cam video that we use. We have videos that have been taken by people that were at incident scenes, and certainly numerous photographs of incident scenes where these events have occurred. Some of them are pretty dramatic. We have one video clip of a trooper in Tennessee who was doing a routine traffic stop and was struck by a vehicle, and it was caught on a dash cam. When he was struck by the vehicle, it pushed him out into the lanes of travel. The fact that he was not killed in that incident is a miracle, and he would tell you that. And I think those kind of videos really do get people's attention because they can all relate to a time or incident that they were at where they were in the exact same position and could have had the same result.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that one is the one where he didn't get killed. When you and I were having breakfast this morning, you were sharing with me that one of the challenges you face is that there are people out there who are so data or statistic driven that they'll say there was only X number of first responder fatalities last year related to highway incidents, and you were saying that one of the challenges is that these people that are data driven by the fatalities are missing the fact that there are so many injury events like this trooper or near misses where something happens and when the dust settles, no one was hurt and everybody just kind of breathes a big sigh of relief. There's not much in the way of meaningful measured data on those injuries and near misses, are there?
Right. That's been a big problem for us. And I think one of the services that the folks at Responder Safety provide is that we do a yeoman's effort at this point in trying to track the struck-by incidents that occur around the country. When you look at the firefighter line of duty death statistics, at this point what we tell people is there's an average of 4 or 5 line of duty deaths each year involving firefighters being struck and killed by vehicles. But when you look at the number of incidents that have occurred where a firefighter, EMT, or paramedic has been struck by a vehicle and injured, and sometimes those injuries are life-changing and disabling. We've certainly had firefighters who were struck and had both legs amputated at an incident scene. That changes their life dramatically going forward, but they don't get recorded as a line of duty death, and there is no real mechanism in place to capture the data on those close calls or injury-only type incidents, or those incidents where somebody runs into an emergency vehicle. So we've gotten much better over the last 14 years or so of using fire apparatus as a blocking piece of equipment out on roadway incidents. And what we've seen is the number of times that people have driven into those big red, yellow, or white trucks that are out there, damaging the truck and in some cases totaling it. There are no firefighter injuries or fatalities because of the strategies and tactics that they were employing at the time, and that incident gets lost in the data that's being collected. So it's not counted, nobody talks about it until it turns into a line of duty death of some sort. And every single one of these incidents that occurs could result in a line of duty death or multiple line of duty deaths. It's just for whatever reason or various circumstances that we didn't have a fatality. And unfortunately right now, the way the world operates, we track line of duty deaths, but we don't do a great job of tracking line of duty injuries or close calls. And we're pretty certain that the data that we have is very, very conservative. We know that there are other incidents occurring out there that we just never learn about. There's just no way for us to capture the information unless somebody shares the story with us or points us towards the information about the incident. So I have every reason to believe that for every incident that we record and track, there are probably 3 or 4 other incidents out there that we never know about. And then when you add in all of the other responders who work at roadway incidents, especially law enforcement, Department of Transportation, safety service patrols, towing operators, all of those same folks that we operate with at some of the incidents that we respond to, the numbers are much more significant and help people to get a much better understanding of what the hazard is.
Yeah, I clearly see the challenge because there's no mechanism for that data to be reported. When there's a fatality, it's going to get reported and recorded. But these injury events and near misses are just, I would imagine, very difficult for you to capture if somebody doesn't bring it to your attention. You'd said something there a few minutes ago that kind of just got my mind wandering off with a question. Why are people hitting emergency vehicles that are parked on highways or roadways with brightly colored trucks and lights flashing? And has anything been done in the way of research or trying to understand the psychology of a driver or what's going on out there that a responder might need to know, that this is not your grandpa and his Studebaker going down the highway anymore?
It's we refer to the drivers today as D drivers, D as in David drivers. They're drugged, they're drowsy, they're distracted, and in some cases, as we say, they're just plain dumb. The drivers of today do not have respect for authority. And the story I tell in some cases is that back in the 70s when I got involved in the fire service, one of my jobs as a rookie was to stop traffic in front of the fire station in the center of town when the engines returned from a call so that they could back safely back into the firehouse. And in 1972, if I walked out with a helmet on my head and put my hand up for traffic on the eastbound lanes of the roadway in front of our fire station, people stopped, and they stayed stopped while I walked over to the westbound lanes and stopped 2 lanes of traffic over on the other side. And those people stopped and waited for the engines to back in. And one of the things that boggles my mind is that we've recorded any number of incidents where an engine has returned to a fire station, has swung around and stopped to enable one of the firefighters to get off the rig, to act as a spotter while the rig is backing into the fire station. And that spotter, as they walk around the rear of the rig, has been struck by a vehicle that decided it was taking too long for the engine to back into the fire station and drive behind the engine on the apron to keep going on their journey, wherever it is that they're going to. We have got to realize that the drivers out there today are not paying attention to what they're doing. They are extremely distracted. Cell phones, obviously, are one of the culprits. Smartphones have made the situation even worse because now some of these drivers are not even looking out the windshield. They're looking at their smartphone, texting, reading a message, trying to dial a phone number. More importantly, these days, they're using their smartphone as a GPS, and the technology doesn't always work the way it's intended, so we have to fiddle with the controls to make the GPS tell us what we want to know. And even though they might only be looking at their smartphone for 5 seconds, the distance that they travel in that 5 seconds can mean the difference between hitting or not hitting a piece of emergency apparatus that's out on the roadway, regardless of the color, number, or type of warning lights that are on it. And part of our training is to remind people that sometimes you're dealing with a driver who's not even looking out the windshield. It's not that you don't have the right colored truck. It's not that you don't have enough lights. It's they're not looking out the windshield. And we have got to make people aware of that the D drivers are out there to get us. They have a me-first attitude, which is very different than what it was 20 or 30 years ago. And they really don't have respect for authority of any type at this point. They just want to get from point A to point B, and they see you as an impediment in their journey. So they will do anything they can to get around or through your incident as quickly as they possibly can in almost every situation.
So the takeaway lesson for first responder situational awareness would be: don't ever think that the motoring public is either A, paying attention to us, or B, care that we're out there on the highway, that we should always see them as somebody who's going to be either one of the D's or trying to maneuver their way around us because we're slowing them down, so to speak, to get to wherever it is that they have to get to in such a hurry.
Absolutely. That is absolutely part of the message that we start out with in all of our training classes, is to understand how those drivers operate and what they're thinking or seeing instead of visualizing it from our perspective. And I would tell you that I've met any number of firefighters who are those D drivers when they're in their personal vehicles, and most people in the classes these days can relate to what I'm talking about. I don't know how we change that because it's a societal issue at this point, but we've got to understand and assume that the drivers that are going to be operating around our incident scene fit into that category of being a D driver of some sort, which then leads into the training materials that we present on how do you get their attention, how do you prevent them from striking your firefighters. And now the big issue that we're trying to address is we've done a pretty good job of figuring out how to protect your firefighters. Now we got to figure out how to protect expensive fire apparatus instead of using it as a concrete barrier wall out on the highway, which is essentially what we're doing. Fire apparatus is very expensive these days, and if you total a piece of fire apparatus to protect your firefighters, I think all of your listeners can relate to that and say absolutely. But the financial picture in a lot of places around the country these days basically tells me we can't afford to crash fire trucks on a regular basis because it's financially not feasible for a lot of departments to replace or repair them, and you take a piece of equipment out of service for an extended period of time after an incident like that. So there's any number of benefits to not having these incidents in the first place, and the material that we present is the body of knowledge that we've acquired over the last almost 15 years at this point related to this subject, and we share with them the tips and strategies and tactics that we know have been a benefit to those working on the roadway.
Jack, we're going to take a break for just a moment so we can tell the listeners where they can find Situational Awareness Matters live events and about our online academy. If you're interested in attending a live event, you can check out the Situational Awareness Matters tour stop schedule at samatters.com. Click on the Program and Keynotes tab below the header, then click on the Events Schedule tab. If I'm in your area, I hope you'll consider attending a live event. If you're not able to attend a live event, consider signing up for the SA Matters Online Academy. The Academy contains videos and articles that cover the same content as the 3-day live tour event, delivered in 14 modules that you can go through at your own pace from your own computer. The Academy Plus version includes 4 books that are referenced throughout the Academy. The Plus version is a great bargain because the tuition simply covers the costs of the books, making the Academy free. Just click on the link below the header on the SA Matters homepage titled Online Academy. Okay, let's resume our interview with Jack Sullivan and talk about some recent events that's been in the news related to highway incidents. Recently this year, there was a high-profile incident, and there's been numerous high-profile incidents where firefighters have been arrested for parking their apparatus in defensive ways on highway incidents, as almost of the getting me to think that the firefighters have been to your class or at least got your message and has bought into the need to be proactive in protecting themselves, in most cases using their apparatus, but maybe the police agency had not had the class and had the same message, and there are some conflicts that are occurring out there as the responders are trying to be proactive and defensive, but being told, move that apparatus or you're going to get arrested. Are you seeing some of this? And if you are in a class, what advice would you give responders about how to work through this potential conflict before they get to an incident scene and have it?
I would say it most definitely is an issue that needs to be addressed, and we do see a few examples each year of law enforcement and fire not agreeing on how to manage an incident scene on a roadway. We certainly have had several examples this year, probably most notably the one that occurred in California involving a California Highway Patrol officer and a fire captain who had a disagreement about how to manage an incident scene, and the patrol officer eventually arrested the captain. That incident is still playing out and is looking like every day that it's going to head to the court system for a resolution of some sort. There are some things that we've learned over time on how to prevent those types of altercations. And the first thing that we talk about is that you should develop a standard operating guideline or a standard operating policy or procedure of some sort for your response to roadway incidents. And in the past, most of the SOPs and SOGs that we have developed in the fire service have been linear in just our agency. We sit down with the appropriate people in our department, we develop an SOP or an SOG, we edit it, we revise it, we settle on what it is, and we put it out there for everybody. And what I tell folks these days is it's no longer acceptable to develop an SOP or SOG related to roadway incident response without involving our partners in the law enforcement community, the transportation community, the safety service patrols for those that have them operating in their area. They have got to be part of that SOP or SOG development so that the things that we're putting in there that seem to make sense to us in the fire and EMS field also make sense to those folks on the law enforcement side of the house and the transportation side of the house. And our recommendation is that the fire departments should have representatives who meet regularly with their counterparts in the other agencies in what we call TIM committees, Traffic Incident Management Committees, to talk about response procedures, strategies, and tactics, to review incidents that have occurred in the past, talk about what worked well, what didn't work well, gives every agency the chance to highlight issues or problems as they see it, and as a group brainstorm and work towards a resolution with an eye towards improving their roadway response for every incident that they go to. And what we explain to people is what we don't want you to do is to meet your counterparts in the other agencies at 0 dark 30 in the morning and start exchanging business cards in a interstate environment in the cold, rainy weather or whatever, because you don't know the other responders that you're working with. We want you to collaborate, communicate, and cooperate with those folks long before you ever get dispatched to a roadway incident. And I think everybody in the fire service can relate to incidents that they respond to where you know the other firefighters or EMTs or the police officers that are at the scene. Those scenes always seem to operate more efficiently than those incidents where we respond with people that we don't know, haven't interacted with before, or have never worked with before. The idea here is to get to know everybody, and I would tell you in my experience, our counterparts in the law enforcement field are a lot like us. We all think the same way. We put family first. We are very concerned about the well-being and welfare of our brothers and sisters that we work with on a regular basis, and I think the key to this is to expand that brother and sisterhood to include those people in the other agencies so that we have a bigger group of people. And I think everybody that we've ever talked to about this subject can agree that one thing that is common across the board for everybody is everybody wants to go home safe at the end of an incident or at the end of a shift. And if you use that as a starting point, we've had a lot of success in many places where people meet and work on this issue together on a regular basis, where they head off the possibility of having a situation where they disagree at an incident scene and somebody ends up getting arrested. It just doesn't happen with those folks that you work with on a regular basis and are considered a friend. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the number one recommendation, is get to meet and work with these people before you have an incident. And in most cases, that will head off those altercations.
Yeah, it seems so simple, but it takes an investment of time and effort to build those relationships that are going to pay off significantly when you're at an incident scene and have some disagreement. It's easier to disagree, or at least come to a meaningful, quick resolution to somebody that you know well and that you could say that you're friendly with, versus a complete stranger who you don't understand where they're coming from. And throw in the fact that there might be a little bit of stress on the scene, there might be a little bit of ego on the scene, there might be a little bit of anxiety about getting differing priorities. The cops want to get the roadway open, keep the traffic moving. The firefighters want to focus on the patients or the actual incident scene. So good advice there. You've got some training coming up at the National Fire Academy next week, and you're bringing a couple hundred or more than a couple hundred folks to the campus of the National Fire Academy. Share with the audience what you're doing there.
Well, I think one of the things that's happened over the last 2 years is that we finally have a nationally recognized program that is designed to be presented to a multi-agency type group. So when we first started talking about this subject almost 14 or 15 years ago, our primary audience were firefighters and EMTs, paramedics. What we've learned over time is exactly what we were just talking about, that partnership that needs to develop and the collaboration between agencies. So over the last 5 years, we've transitioned to doing the training for mixed audiences. We want firefighters, EMT, paramedics, law enforcement officers, transportation people, safety service patrols, towing and recovery operators, all of those people that we work with out on the roadway. We want them sitting in the same room, in the same training environment, and being taught the same message. And we finally have a mechanism to do that. It's been supported and funded by the Federal Highway Administration. It's referred to as the National Traffic Incident Management and Responder Safety Training Program. It is designed to be delivered to a multi-agency audience. And this event that we have coming up at the National Fire Academy next weekend is a train the trainer session for fire service personnel. Almost 265 people have registered to attend. And what we're going to do is the Federal Highway Administration's Traffic Incident Management Program. We have DOT people coming, we have law enforcement people coming, and we have a cadre of master instructors who represent all of those different agencies. And we team teach these programs so that you're hearing a consistent message from the law enforcement community and the fire service community about how to recognize the hazards out on the highway, and more importantly, the strategies and tactics that everybody should employ to protect not only the responders at the incident scene, but the victims that we're responding to assist in the first place, and just as important, the other motorists who are on the same roadway that we're operating on. So we've developed a curriculum. It's about a day and a half where we train people to be trainers on this particular subject. When they come out of that class next week, they will be authorized by the Federal Highway Administration to be an instructor for a 4-hour version of the Traffic Incident Management class, or what we refer to as TIM. And the idea is that we're trying to get to 100,000 or more emergency responders by the end of this calendar year. We're well on the way to doing that. We've made great progress over the last year and a half or so, but we still have a long way to go, and eventually we'd like every emergency responder to have the same message, and that's been a big help. We just need to do more of it, and I wish we could do it faster and more every day is what it comes down to.
Okay, good strategy. Train the trainers out there, then get the seed message out to many more fire departments, because I know you're traveling everywhere, but you're just one person and you can only reach so many. So, getting the message into the hands of many more responders to be your trainers is a great idea. Now, you have a website that people can go to learn some more about responder safety. So tell them where to find you on the internet, and then what they might see when they stop by the website.
The primary website is respondersafety.com, all one word, respondersafety.com. We've operated that for more than 10 years at this point, and we use it as a repository for all of the body of knowledge that we have accumulated on this subject over the years. So one of the things that we do is we track struck-by vehicle incidents that we talked about earlier, and we post links to those news stories out on our webpage under the struck-by section so that people who want to do training in their station related to this subject can go to that database and do a search to identify struck-by incidents that may have occurred in their state over the last few years. So they might not be aware of the incident, but this will give them something that's close to home that people can relate to in their training classes. So we track as many of those as we possibly can. We have line-of-duty death statistics and information and links to NIOSH line-of-duty death investigations that have been done where firefighters have been struck and killed by vehicles, so that there's information that people can use for background. We provide a whole resource section that has a lot of information related to codes, standards, best practices, a template for an SOP or SOG, PowerPoint presentations that can be customized in a particular area about this particular subject. And probably more than anything, over the last few years through the firefighter safety grants, we have been able to develop an online learning network. So on the main page at respondersafety.com is a large icon that will take you to the Responder Safety Learning Network, where we've taken this body of knowledge that we've accumulated and built it into individual training modules that can be taken online for free because it's been paid for by grant money. We have 10 or 12 subjects that are live right now on the Learning Network. We have another 4 that are in production at the moment. It's free. You do have to register so we can track how many people are using it. And most recently we had over 10,000 registered users of the Learning Network. The idea being, if we can't do an instructor-led class every place in the country, we can at least introduce the concepts and the theories and the strategies and tactics that we've developed over time to those people who can't get to our classroom sessions by being introduced to it on the Learning Network. We have a module, for example, on blocking practices, how to position emergency vehicles at an incident scene. It only takes about 20 or 25 minutes to go through the module. There are quiz questions within the module to make sure that people are getting and understanding the information. If they successfully complete the quiz at the end of the module, then they are automatically issued an electronic certificate that they can use to give to their department to put in their training file. We now have a mechanism in place so that a third party can track their personnel that are taking certain lessons or all of the lessons. So if a county fire department, for example, puts a message out and says they want all of their firefighters in the next 60 days to take the module on incident command at roadway incidents, we now have a mechanism in place so that they can track that to see who has completed the training or who hasn't. And it's all free. It doesn't cost anything. And we're getting more and more users of that system on a regular basis. We also have established tabs on the website for each of the different disciplines and agencies that respond. So in addition to our primary mission of appealing to the fire and EMS community, we now have editors who help us with information and content for the towing and recovery industry, for the law enforcement community, and to try and bring information to the website that helps everybody to collaborate and coordinate on this particular subject. We want it to be a consistent message across all the agency lines, and the website is really the best way we have of doing that. Of course, we also have a presence on Facebook and Twitter to keep people up to date on some of those things that are going on, and it will almost always revert back to the full story or more information at the website with photographs when we get them and video clips and things like that that people can tap into and use.
So is there a Facebook fan page?
Roadway Safety is our Facebook page. There's a link to it right off of the website.
Okay.
And we have a Twitter Responder Safety handle that we use out there also, where we use for breaking news alerts about struck-by incidents or line-of-duty deaths. And we've got a pretty robust network of followers who help us track these incidents and advise us when incidents occur, which we have to depend on because there is no reporting mechanism, as we talked about earlier, for us to get that data. So we need somebody in the state who hears about an incident that at least gives us a clue that something has happened. Then we can try and track down the information, and the social media community has been a big help for us in that way.
Is there a mechanism on the website where if somebody becomes aware of one, they can go and do a click link and
Yes.
report
Sure, there's a Contact Us button on the website where you can put information in an email type environment and send it to us. We get questions all the time about strategies and tactics, and here's the problem we're having, what can we do to solve this problem? And we probably don't know all of the answers amongst our little group of merry men and women that are working on this subject, but I think one of the things we've done over the last 10 plus years is develop a very robust network of people across all of the disciplines who have had the experience of dealing with almost anything that we've encountered out there so far, and in many cases having developed a solution. And in some cases, that solution has been in place for a long time, so they can give us an idea of how well it worked and what they've done to refine it as time goes on. So the Contact Us button gets used a lot, and we do the best we can to respond to people very quickly on those things.
Okay, good. Well, we're at our time limit, so thank you, Jack, for taking a little bit of time down here at the NVFC Summit in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to share with the listeners your passion on responder safety. I appreciate the gift of your time.
Oh, thanks for inviting us. And I know you like to talk about Sam Matters all the time, and we've kind of taken a dovetail to that, and we like to talk about Tim Matters also.
Yeah, good, good. All right, thank you. Thanks again to Jack Sullivan from the Responder Safety Institute for taking time to sit down with me to discuss his passion on roadway safety. I will put a link to the Institute's website in the show notes. I'd like to take a moment to share some feedback I received on the radio show and thank you for searching out the show on iTunes and subscribing and leaving your feedback and your 5-star ratings. This one came from Firefighter 505. They use aliases in the feedback on iTunes. And here's what he said. You must take time to listen to Dr. Chief Gasaway's podcast. More life-saving information for us. Thanks, iTunes, for carrying a podcast that will change firefighters' lives and ultimately save more lives. And this next piece of feedback came from Alex Hickey of the North Kitsap Fire and Rescue in Washington. This is a great style for a podcast show done right. The doctor has a great presentation style, and there are many takeaways from each episode. My favorite part of the episode is when he reviews a near miss or close call. Too often, these types of incidents are ignored by firefighters, and they choose to focus only on the line of duty death, which are by no means a bad thing to focus on, but we can also learn from our near misses. What are you waiting for? Listen now and subscribe. So thank you, Alex, for that piece of feedback as well. Well, that's it. Episode 10 is complete. Thank you for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you like the show, please consider going to iTunes and searching out SA Matters Radio and subscribing to the podcast. Leaving your feedback and a 5-star review will surely help others find the show. You can also sign up for the free SA Matters monthly newsletter by visiting samatters.com and clicking on the red box on the right side of the homepage, and I appreciate that too. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.